Hi guys, it's Kelly here and I'm back with another video for Honeybee Stamps. Today we are going to be using the antique layering roses, these circle frame cuts, and then the small card big hug stamps dies, and then they also have hot foiling plates. So let me tell you how this card came to be. This card came to be because I was in a rut. I just was. There was a couple of days where I sat down to make cards and nothing was really coming together. Let's talk about this real quick. So I'd seen a bunch of other videos where people had good luck with foiling with regular dies. So I wanted to give that a try and it did work extremely well. I ran into a completely different problem where when I took it out of the die cutting machine, I took the hot foil platform out of the die cutting machine, that it came off of the die. So then I kind of had to line it back up with the actual die cutting, and that part I was not stellar at. So it ended up being a circle frame with like gold accents, not even around the whole thing continuously, but like gold accents. But here, the actual foiling part worked fabulous. It looks super cool, kind of like disco-y. I'm a fan of the way that it looks like this, but then I wanted to cut it out because I wanted one of the frames. And I tried to spend some time lining it up because it does leave an impression on the paper, when it presses in for the foil. I tried lining it up as best that I could, and I was just a smidge off, and that's all it takes, like for real. So, anywho, I'd been playing around with a couple of other sets. Nothing was coming together. I could not make it work. I was just, what happens especially when you do a job where you kind of have to be creative. Sometimes your head just ain't willing to make it happen. And so I was doing my usual things. I was going on Pinterest, I was going on Instagram, I was doing a bunch of things to try to see if I could find something to be inspired by. And I had posted another video earlier in the week that had a wreath on it. And so Mary had sent me a message and she was like, "Love the cards. I'm a sucker for a good wreath." Me too, Mary. Me too. So maybe that's something I can work with. And so I came in and was looking at the stuff that I had, and I was like, maybe I won't do a full wreath. Maybe I'll do a more modern, like half wreath. And so that's where I got the idea that we're running with today. Funny where things can come from. But when, you're in a rut, beggars can't be choosers. So I am going to be doing the layering stamps. I have done a card in the past before with the antique layering dies. They do have an outline in them that you can color, which is what I did the first time because that's what I prefer. But I wanted to give the layering a go because I don't have a lot of time. And the layering is really beautiful and it gives you a very realistic look. It's just not, I enjoy it because it's still creating, but I don't enjoy it as much as I enjoy coloring. However, I was pretty happy with the way that these came out. We're going to talk about these inks. So when you are inking up and stamping large solid inks or large solid stamps, it can be very difficult to get a good solid impression. Now, I'm not going to name the ink company that I'm using, and I'm not going to link them in my YouTube description because I don't want people to think like, oh, these are bad inks. They are not bad inks. I have had this problem with multiple different stamp companies that I have used their inks. This is the problem. The problem is that you get texture when you're stamping from the ink pad. And I don't necessarily know that that's their fault. Like when you're trying to ink up a solid stamp, you can see how it would be very easy to kind of transfer the texture of the ink pad onto the stamp and then therefore onto your paper. I do have a little bit of a trick that I use. Here, there was a fuzzy on my stamp I had to get rid of. There is a little bit of a trick that I use to kind of help blend that, but I could have helped myself beforehand. I could have helped myself by prepping my stamps, which I did not take the time to do. So if you have never heard of it, preparing your stamps, giving them some tooth, giving them some texture, something for the ink to cling on to, is really easy. You just take an eraser and go over the stamps, wipe off the little eraser fuzzies that you get, and then maybe do that 1 or 2 times. This removes any of the chemicals that are left over from processing the stamps when they're created, and it also, like I said, gives you some texture for the ink to hold on to. Here with the layers, I always have trouble with layering stamps. I find it very difficult to line them up. These, I'm going to be honest with you, I didn't have a lot of trouble with. And a big part of that, I think, is the layering guide that Honeybee gives you when you order this stamp. I had it right next to me. I could look and see, what direction and what pieces parts they are. So it shows you, the layering guide shows you the individual stamp layers alone and then what they look like all together. When I was lining up, none of these were a problem. It was the fourth layer. The fourth layer was a little bit smaller because it's your darkest color. And that was the one that was a little bit tricky. And honestly, looking at them individually to see what direction it needed to go was helpful. But what was more helpful was looking at the whole piece combined, because then I could see where the darker parts were and where I needed to position my stamp for that to make sense. So here is where I'm on the fourth section. I finally am like, okay, Kelly, use the layering guide. And then I was able to figure out where exactly it needed to go and then get my stamping done in the area that it needed to. So when you're looking at this, you're probably thinking like, Kelly, the stamping doesn't look bad at all. It looks pretty solid. It looks nice with the layers, and it does. You are correct. But in real life, it was a little bit grainy. And I was looking to kind of smooth it out. Now, there are some inks out there that when you stamp with them, they kind of smooth out on their own. But I have found, in my experience, that those inks are the ones that are most likely to stain your stamps. And while this does not bother me personally whatsoever, I just think it makes them look well loved. I know it does bother other people, as does my Misty Door. My Misty Door bothers a lot of people for some reason, that it's not clean. I'm a mama of 2. I have a full-time job, and I spend the other part of my time that I have to myself stamping. I'm not going to spend it cleaning. If my Misty Door bothers you, please move along. I can't help you. I'm not your person. It's totally fine. I'm cool with it. I'm not for everybody. But anywho, so once that stamping was done, I decided that I was also going to stamp the leaves in the same way. You can see, like I said, I got my layering guide over there. I'm going to stamp 2 stems for the buds, and I'm going to stamp 2 leaves. For one of the stems and one of the leaves, because there's only 3 layers for these, and the particular ink that I'm using has 4 colors in there, I decided to do one lighter and one darker, so that when I was putting my wreath together, everything wouldn't be so one-toned. So I'm just going to go ahead and stamp those down. And the leaves, I really didn't have any issues lining anything up at all. The guide was there if I needed it, but honestly, I don't even think I looked at it. So Mary, who gave me this idea for the wreaths, I actually was really, I was lucky enough to meet her when I was working for another stamp company, and I was down at, I think it was Create. I'm pretty sure it was Create that I met her and her wonderful daughter, Claire. And they were so super sweet, and they came to see me at the booth where I was doing make and takes, and I got to meet her in person, and they sent sweet little gifts for Caitlin. And so it's funny when you guys make comments, like, oh, I feel like we're friends or whatever. Like so many friends that I have in the crafting industry, I've either never met in real life or I've met them at something like that, where it was like we got together because of card making. And one of my most wonderful friends, Wida, I met her because of card making, and then she just happened to live in my area, and so I got to meet her in person and kind of further that friendship. But so Mary and Claire, I'm sure that you're watching. I do appreciate you, and thank you for the idea to make a wreath card. This is how I finally got one done. How I finally got one done and finished. But yeah, so as far as life goes, um, well, oh, you know what? Let's talk about something else. We're going to talk about this paid promotion thing. If you're watching this video on my channel, then you've seen at the top it says paid promotion. And some people have asked questions about what that means. And I know that, especially in social media in general, whether it's, you know, people you follow on Instagram or people you follow on YouTube or Facebook or, you know, what have you, sometimes it's really hard to tell if somebody's opinion is being purchased. And so when you see the paid promotion for at least my videos, I can tell you nobody's bought my opinion. First of all, it's not for sale. And any time I've ever been approached by anybody who was interested in purchasing my opinion, I have rapidly declined because I don't think that that shows a lot of integrity and it's not something that I want to be part of. My paid promotion for Honeybee is because I was already using Honeybee stamps, and I was using them for quite some time because I love their designs. I thought that they were good quality stamps. And then after I had been using them for a little while, they reached out to me and asked me if I would like to join their design team. And I was able to do that because I already loved their things. And so I felt no issue with joining and supporting a company that I already loved. We're going to go back to the card. So here, this is my little trick to smooth out my granulated stamping. It's the Zero colorless blender. Now, there's a couple of different marker companies. I have Copic, but they mostly have colorless blenders, so you're going to need that. I will tell you, it does, especially when you first get it wet, it does appear to change the color a smidge, makes it maybe a little bit lighter, but eventually when it dries, it goes back to that same like pinkish purple color that I wanted it to be in the first place. I didn't have really any issues with kind of going back and forth over the entire piece as a whole instead of petal versus petal, except for with this bigger one, because I think there was more dark in it. When I went over the dark that was right next to the lightest section, I did have a little bit of smudging, which I just went back in and fixed. You'll see that at the end. For the leaves, I had no issues. I think probably just because there maybe wasn't as dark a pigment, or the darker pigment was going into a slightly darker color. But you can see now that we're kind of up close that you can maybe see that granulation a little bit more. And this just kind of smoothed the whole thing out, and I was much happier with the way that this looks. This will work for the majority of dye inks on the market. Not so much your distress inks. I don't think it'll work with those, but I did not try it. I encourage you to do your own experimenting and see, like, with what inks that you have, if this will work for you, or if you even need it. Unless you're stamping with a pigment ink or a hybrid pigment ink, like a Distress Oxide, there's always a little bit of, it's a little bit granulated. And that it just happens. It's just one of those things because it's a water-based ink. But because of the other properties, which make it so that you cannot use Copic markers with them, because they have that alcohol in the ink, you can use this trick to smooth it out. So try it with whatever you have if you have the need for it. Sometimes I do and sometimes I don't. In this particular case, because I did not take the time to prepare my stamps, like I told you before, that was my fault. I did need to do it in this case. So for the sentiment, this is a very unique kind of sentiment set. So they have the sentiments and stamps, they have the dies, and then they have the hot foil. Now, the hot foil doesn't include all of the same sentiments as the stamp set does. So the stamp set is all of the sentiments in its entirety. The hot foil is just some of the words that you could then foil a portion of your sentiment and have just a different look. So the one I chose is "You Make My Life Brighter." So I foiled that and then I die cut it out. And then here I'm just lining everything up so I could do the stamping portion just flat on my card base to complete my sentiment. And I had to lay everything out first in order to get that right placement. So what were we talking about? Oh, the paid promotion. So in different situations, it means different things. For me, I can tell you on my videos that it just means that I'm compensated for my time. Now, some companies compensate designers monetarily. Some companies compensate designers with product. It just depends on where that company is at and what they are able to offer their designers or their guest designers. But for me, that's all that means. I'm trying to be honest and transparent because I think that is important, that when I make these videos, I am compensated for my time and the video that I'm creating. It's not so much a purchasing of my opinion because I already loved their products. I would never sign up to work with a company that I didn't already love their products before I signed up to work with them. And if I have never used their products, like I've never purchased their products, typically I've tried somebody else's, or I have a friend that I trust that has given me their opinion and been like, no, they're a solid company. Their products are really great. But I would never like sign up to join a team where I wasn't sure I already loved their things. And so, especially when people talk about like joining design teams and they've asked for advice on joining a design team, I always say, like, make sure that it's a company that you love, because first of all, you don't want to put your name on anything that you're not 100% willing to back, especially, once you put it out on the internet, it's out there forever. But also, you're much more likely to use it and use it well if you love it. And so that will draw the eye of companies that are, looking for design teams also. For the stem, you saw right there, like up by the leaf portion, I did put a piece of foam tape so that it would rise up to meet my bud. But the stem portion of it, I did glue down flat so that it would tuck underneath my bigger rows. I had a little bit of a issue. So I had laid everything out, but I didn't take a picture or anything because I figured, well, it wasn't that hard to create in the first place. I could probably knock it back out. Then when I started putting on the last leaf, stem, and bud, I just didn't like the placement. I just didn't like it. And so I put it all down and then I was like, okay, I'm good with it. But then once I started gluing, I was not good with it. I didn't like it. So I tore it all up. And then I replaced it. But in between me tearing it all up, which you're going to see, like you can see me like messing around with it and playing with it and being like, how did I have this before? When I did that, the rose already had foam on it. You're going to see here in a second because I'm going to start because I'm like, well, it is what it is. I'm just going to have to put it down. Once I put the foam on the back of the rose and set it down to finish what I was doing, I knew right away, like, I did not like it. I was not a fan. And so that's when I decided to tear it all up. Just sometimes it happens. But of course, I didn't push the foam down. I just set it there and I was like, nope, this is no good. So then I'm going to take the rose off and then I'm going to pull up the other pieces so that I could get a little bit of a better situation here. And I tried doing it with just moving the stem. I didn't like that either. When I go to take the lease, we're not leasing this. It's not a house. It's not a car. Leaf. When I go to take the leaf off, I did rip my cardstock a little bit. But I knew I was going to be putting it down right back in the same area, so I wasn't too concerned because I figured I was going to cover it back up. But see where that flower is right now? See how I've like set it off to the side, but it's not completely off to the side. It's hanging out there on my card. When I go to pull it up, I rip my cardstock. Yes, I did. Fortunately, it was just a very little bit. So I was able to kind of fix it with my sand eraser, just kind of go over it and smooth it out. And I don't think anybody will ever really notice it. And ultimately, I'm 99.9% sure that when I glued all of this back down, that I glued it in almost exactly the same spot that I removed it from. Ain't that something? I'm pretty sure that that's what I did. Um, yeah, pretty sure. But, we got it done. And sometimes that's just the best you can do. That's the best you're bringing to the table. Um, so yeah, that's the paid promotion thing. It's just because I want you guys to know that, of course, I'm always honest with my reviews. If I don't like something, I just simply don't use it. Because I'm not out here to make anybody feel bad, and I don't want to yuck your yum and all of that. But if it's not for me, then I just don't use it. I don't, talk about it or whatever. I just skip it, figure it's for somebody else, not for me. Um, Here, I've used like, just the basics. Oh, my daughter is squealing. She's found her voice recently. She's downstairs with her dad, and she has found her voice. I don't know if you guys could hear that or not. But anyway, I'm using just these basics gems to kind of fill in that spot, and then I of course can't make anything without the shimmers. So I did put shimmers on the flowers. This did not change the look, or what I mean, the integrity of the stamping at all. I hope you guys learned a useful little trick here that maybe you can apply in the future. I appreciate you guys joining me, and I will catch you on the next video. Bye.